And now, a continuation of CHRONOMASTER by Jane LINDSKOLD and Robert ZELAZNY, as read by the Plurality Report. Chapter 4. We're down, stabilized, locked, and the ship's personal defense program is loaded, Jester announced. Ready to hop, Sugar Pop? Corda sighed, but he was too excited about being planet-side to bother reprimanding the computer. While he was giving his gear a final check, a little globe, not much more than 6 inches in circumference, sped up and hovered about the level of his shoulder. In keeping with the general theme he had created for the Jester, Corda had designed the computer's personal digital assistant to resemble a smiley face, a purple and turquoise smiley face. The PDA's broad grin nearly bisected the sphere and served as a limited clamp so that the PDA could pick up and carry a variety of small items. Right now, a pair of what appeared to be sunglasses dangled from the grinning mouth. "Brought your shades, Sugar Pop," Jester said, her voice emanating from the PDA. "Don't want you to get wrinkles around your eyes." Corda accepted the shades, although superficially they did resemble a pair of mirrored sunglasses. The device did a great deal more, for the glasses provided his link to the Jester. They served as a screen on which he could view, on command, information downloaded from the ship's computer or from the PDA itself. That they also looked pretty cool didn't hurt at all. He slid them into place, marveling, as always, that they did not distort his vision. The PDA buzzed around him, chortling happily. "I've packed the resonance tracer with your things," she said, "and I made you a couple sandwiches for lunch. Are you ready to go?" Corda shouldered his equipment pack. Actually, even with the help of the PDA, Jester could not have packed anything for him. Sometimes he suspected that she would enjoy having a set of hands of her own, perhaps even a full android body. He had considered the possibility, but had always drawn back in trepidation. Jester got into enough mischief without hands and feet. What might she do if she had a complete body? His life, no matter what universe he settled in, would never be the same. Keeping his thoughts to himself, he swatted at the grinning PDA. She dodged easily. "Come along, Jess," he said. "I want to get a look at this garden while we have plenty of daylight left." "I'm right with you, boss," she said. "Do you want me to swoop ahead and take a look at the garden?" Corda shook his head. "No, I don't want to use the extra bottled time to keep you active on your own unless we have to. Remember, this entire universe is in stasis. Nothing should be able to sneak up on us. The only things that can move will be those inside our bottled time sphere." "So we just go strolling in the garden," Jester said, her tone slightly doubtful. Corda had programmed her to be concerned for his safety. "If you say so, Renee." The garden was quite large, neatly bordered by a wrought iron fence sectioned by rough-hewn stone pillars. 2 impressive pillars flanked the gate, supporting a stone arch. Set into the arch's apex, a brass plaque read, "The Garden of Honor." Within the garden, Corda could see flower beds, ornamental ponds, and various statues. Most of the statues had a rather martial flavor. They were warriors in armor, in Star Trooper riflek, in military uniforms taken from numerous human cultures. Corda glanced at the compass reading on the inside of his glasses. "Wouldn't you know it," he said. "The largest statue in the place is right on magnetic north. I should have known Charlie Bell wouldn't design the place for easy access." As Corda strode through the gate, the PDA bobbing at his shoulder, an enormous raven that had been perched on one of the pillars cawed and sprung into the air. The leap of its flight took it outside the confines of Corda's bottled time, and it froze in place, still on the wing. Until time was restored, it would continue to defy both logic and gravity. "Wow," Jester said, bringing her PDA to huddle by Corda's ear. "That was really weird." Corda nodded, but his attention was on the statue that blocked magnetic north. Clad in silver armor that looked vaguely medieval, it towered at least 30 feet tall and was proportionately massive. It bore a sword in one hand and a blaster in the other. Although its features were concealed by an oddly shaped helm, it evoked a feeling of undefinable sadness, as if it mourned all those who had fallen in battle without the least regretting the necessity for war. "I'd hate to blow it up," Corda mused. "Charlie must have worked in a way to move it. Perhaps there's a grav platform built into the base." He was climbing onto the statue's pedestal when, with a slight creaking sound, the statue came to life. "It's not a statue at all," Jester said. "It's an enormous robot." "When my bottled time came close enough, the robot activated," Corda agreed. "It's a risk, but I'll stay within range. I may be able to convince it to move off of the pedestal." The gigantic robot had now located them. Tilting its helmeted head slightly, it directed the attention of its dark eye slits toward them. "Welcome to the Garden of Honor," it boomed. Thanks," Corda said. "In ancient days, the heroes of the fort held fast," the statue continued, its tone making Corda's ears ring. "Before the press of the enemy, they never retreated. Here, Ditir commemorates their sacrifice." "Ditir?" Corda said, resisting the impulse to rub his ears. "Is that the name of this planet?" "Ditir is the ruler of this universe," the robot boomed indignantly. "He is the great commander who guards and guides us through all danger and strife. What kind of infidel are you?" Seeing the enormous metal boot stirring as if the armored robot would grind him underfoot, Corda hastened to find an appropriate reply. "I'm not from this universe," he said lamely. "Ditir hired me to do some repair work for him. Unfortunately, you're standing right on the place I need to set up my equipment. Could you move to one side?" "Ever did the heroes of the fort hold fast," the robot said. "I shall not stir for a mere civilian." "But I am here at Dieter's request," Corda protested. "You would not be retreating, just stepping to one side." "I shall not stir for a civilian," the robot repeated stubbornly. "You shall not fool me." Corda stepped away so that the robot would fall back into stasis. Rubbing his tortured ears, he sat on one of the benches. The PDA buzzed up and rested lightly on his shoulder. "Blowing that damn thing up seems like a waste of good artwork and robotics," Corda said. "But I can't let it stand there and keep me from accessing magnetic north." "I don't suppose that you could set the resonance tracer on its head," Jester suggested. "No good," Corda said. "The resonance tracer would need bottled time to function, and the bottled time would activate the robot. I'm willing to bet anything that the robot's blaster works perfectly." "Yeah," Jester sighed. "How about the UT? Will any of its settings help?" Corda took out the device. "I can't see that the hammer or screwdriver will be of any help, but let's check the variable setting." He touched a button, and a faintly humming rod of blue light about as long as a knife blade sprang forth. "A force rod," he said. "Useful for all sorts of minor welding and repair jobs, but I'm afraid it doesn't have the punch we need to deal with this robot. In any case, even if it did have the power, I can't imagine the robot sitting by while we cut away at its base." "Well, it was worth checking," Jester said. "I wonder," Corda said after a thoughtful pause, "if we could find this fort the robot mentioned. Maybe I could get one of the heroes there to come and talk with the robot." "Gee, boss, I don't know," Jester said. "There seems to be a whole lot of cities on this planet. I don't know how we could find one fort out of all these buildings. Corda rose to his feet. There may be a depiction of the one we need here in this Garden of Honor. It would fit with the general mood. Will you stroll in the garden with me, lady? Jester giggled. But of course, noble sir. As they walked through the garden, they brought a whisper of time with them. Fish leapt from the ornamental ponds, flowers swayed in the breezes that vanished seconds later, fragments of bird song reached their ears. None of the other statues proved to be robots, although Corda tested his bottle time on each as they walked by. That's further proof that we're meant to be able to move that big guy, Corda said. If this garden was intended as a robotic tour of Herb's martial history, then others would have their spiels as well. It's weird, Jester said. This is a pretty new universe, right? How can it have a history of battles? Good question, Corda said, but actually it's pretty simple. We just got what the robot was programmed to believe. If its programmer gave it a history of centuries of battles, then as far as it is concerned, there have been centuries of battles. Right, Jester said. That was dumb of me. Not really, Corda said. There are other possibilities as well. Time in this universe could run faster than in the universe prime. Charlie might have finished his work, say 50 years ago, but if the time was set at 4 times normal, then 200 years would have gone by. Wow, Jester said. Do you think that's the answer? Honestly, Corda said, no, I don't. Human life is short enough, even with the life-prolonging drugs. I can't believe anybody would voluntarily choose to burn their life up more quickly. I think an artificial history makes more sense. Speaking of which, the PDA bounced in the air. I see it, boss. There's a diorama over there. The diorama was something rather like a relief map built into beautifully sculpted terrain. It depicted a battle in progress. Isolated from its surroundings by a ravine, a dark, blocky fortress stood besieged, almost certainly the fort. The enemy had gathered its forces on a rocky, barren plain on the far side of the ravine. Missile launchers were trained on the fort. Soldiers with rifles and rocket launchers crouched in hastily dug trenches, presumably ready to shoot any who emerged from the fort's protecting walls. Jester, I want you to scan the survey we took of the planet and see if you can locate the original of that fort. I've already located it, the PDA reported smugly. I'm projecting you a picture now. There's something you should see. The image that appeared on the interior of Corda's glasses was virtually identical to the diorama, with one telling exception. Bodies lay sprawled on the rocky plain. A missile fired toward the fort had been halted in mid-arc. The fort itself had laser cannons deployed, defending a small cadre who had established a beachhead on the plain. That's very strange, Corda said. The evidence would seem to show that the battle is still in process. Yeah, Jester answered. Are you still certain you want to go there? No, Corda replied. But the alternative is admitting that Charlie Bell could design a blockade that I can solve only by resorting to brute force. My vanity, if nothing else, is on the line. Besides, how dangerous can a battlefield in stasis be? The fort is on the other side of the planet, Jester said. We can get there most quickly by taking the ship. Corda nodded. Then that's what we'll do. Let's make certain that our flight plan and landing path won't activate any live ordnance. I'm beginning to suspect that on Herbs there may always be a battle raging. This time, Corda did not let the Jester's computer fly the ship unassisted. Figuring that 2 alert minds were better than 1, he strapped himself into the pilot's console. Realistically, he was actually taking the co-pilot's console since the Jester's computer had reflexes far faster than those of any human. Watching through the scanner link, Corda studied the cities spread out below. Most showed some sign of battle damage. Bomb craters, the burned-out shells of buildings, permanent armament placements. In some, the sudden cessation of time had halted active battles. Oddly, the uniforms worn by the soldiers were rarely repeated from region to region. Technology levels shifted as well. In some places, the equipment was ultra-modern, but in others, the warriors fought with sword and shield. Jess, Corda said thoughtfully, I have an odd thought about this planet. It's almost too weird, though. Try me, Jester said. I'm good at weird. I like you, don't I? Corda decided to ignore the comment. At first I thought that we had stumbled on a world at war, but the mixture of technologies and uniforms suggests a nastier possibility. Yes? What if this world is one vast war game? Corda asked. Your thesis fits the available data, Jester said hesitantly. But why would any sane person do that? Well, who's saying that the person who ordered herbs designed is sane? Corda countered. Wealth is a requirement, sanity is not. That would certainly explain why Charlie Bell was so nervous when asked about his employer. Uncharacteristically, Jester did not have a quick, sassy answer for him. Corda was trying to decide whether this made him more or less apprehensive when he felt the engines shift to signal an impending landing. I'm gonna bring us in on the same side of the ravine as the fort, Jester said. I can't see any advantage to landing in the territory held by the fort's enemies. Corda nodded in agreement, his own attention reserved for the ground-level scanners. The flat open plain surrounding the fort looked so very tempting. What had kept the enemies from bombarding the fort at closer range? The near-omnipresent stasis made scanning difficult. The absence of time also meant the absence of heat, of sound, of the myriad little indications that he would usually use to detect danger points. As the situation stood, if he was not careful, he would not know there was danger until his own ship's bottled time activated it. Coming in, Jester announced. 60 seconds to ground contact. Bottled time contact in 45 seconds. On the peripheral borders of his shades, Corda was aware of time ticking down. The flatness of the plain, its deceptive openness, still troubled him. The countdown was at 22 seconds when he suddenly yelled, Jess, pull us up now! That's a minefield! The engines roared, protest, as the Jester pushed skyward. Corda felt his neck snap back at the sudden G-force. Only his padded headrest saved him from whiplash. Below, the faint plane waited, deceptively innocent and calm, but Corda knew that he had waited only that had he waited a few seconds more, even launching into the heavens might not have saved them. Once the bottled time activated the buried explosives, the backwash from the engines alone would have been enough to set them off. Rubbing his hand along the back of his neck, he smiled. Good job, Jester. You've better reflexes than I do. Thanks, boss. The hologram appeared, smiling shyly, her arms behind her back. She pulled out a bouquet of flowers and made as if to hand them to him. And thanks for saving me. Those mines really would have smashed up my underside. Corda touched the holographic bouquet. Of course nothing was there, but the hologram seemed pleased that he had accepted her gift. Is there any other good place for us to land? He asked. I'm scanning, she said. There's a field out beyond the copse of trees that borders the battlefield. I see a few deer on it in stasis, so I guess that isn't mined. Probably it's beyond the parameters of this particular war game, Corda guessed. Let's try setting down there. I don't mind walking the mile or so back to the fort. If I'm careful, I won't activate any of the enemies with my bottled time, and I can talk with the defenders. This time the Jester sat down without incident. With the PDA bobbing at his shoulder, Corda trudged across the field towards the forest. Here he could see touches that definitely showed Charlie Bell's style. A waterfall cascaded over some rocks in a brook, falling from pool to pool with artifice too perfect to be entirely natural. Iridescent blue butterflies sipped nectar from ice-white flowers. Charlie made pretty worlds. It must have really burned him to see this one turned into a war zone. Corda wondered how his old friend could have taken the contract. Perhaps he hadn't known what was planned until it was too late. or too dangerous to back out. Heading back to the fort, Corda tromped through the wooded copse far less quietly than he would have liked, comforted by the fact that no one outside his time bubble could hear the noise. Once he reached the battlefield, he skirted the stasis-bound soldiers. "When I reactivate time here," he muttered to himself, "the killing will continue. Does that make me a murderer?" From the vicinity of his shoulder, he heard Jester snort disapprovingly. "I don't see how you could think that, Sugar Pop. Whoever started this war should worry about the morality of it, not you." "I know," Corda said. "That is the rational answer, but look at that young man." He gestured to where a soldier lay on his side, one leg twisted at a right angle to his torso, blood frozen in mid-gush from a wound in his side. "When time resumes its flow, he will bleed to death in a few moments. Do I have the right to do that to him?" "Do you have the right to leave the rest of this planet in stasis?" Jester countered. "Do you have the right to leave everyone here vulnerable to whoever triggered the stasis in the first place? Let me remind you, great and powerful one, whoever turned this place off didn't do it for the good of the universe of herbs." "Jester, we have no idea why herbs has been placed into stasis. I firmly expected to see evidence of grand-scale theft, but all I see is a universe apparently devoted to war games, and that the games have stopped for now." "Maybe the saboteurs are playing their own war game," Jester suggested. "If so, they've won this move." "That doesn't explain why similar action has been taken against Ahrens," Corda said, shaking his head. "No, whatever the saboteurs' motives are, they are larger than the games that herbs plays. What has me puzzled is that the saboteurs have at least one trained universe designer on their team. They must be paying very well to get his or her services, yet I do not see how they are making a profit. Of course, we have barely sampled the universe." "I babble. I simply don't have enough information to make a reasonable guess." Corda walked a few paces before continuing. "I don't like having to act without knowing more of the situation, and I dislike knowing that when I carry out the job Conchita Devenu hired me to do, that young man and others like him will die." The PDA buzzed in front of him so that its smiling face was staring directly into his eyes. "Tell me, Renee, how did you ever become a universe maker if you have such incredible scruples?" He batted at the PDA. "Ah, youthful arrogance, I suppose. Perhaps the scruples weren't there all along. Perhaps they developed with age. For all my supple skin and youthful appearance, I am centuries old, Jess. I hope I have learned something in all those years." The metal sphere bobbed to the edge of the time field. "I just hope you haven't started thinking so much that you'll get yourself killed while you're puzzling out the ethics of a situation." Corda smiled sadly and gestured at the torn bodies on the battlefield. "There are far worse ways to die, Jester. I can promise you that." They finished crossing the battlefield in silence. At the edge of the ravine, a solid metal pillar-shaped scanner held a solitary vigil. When they were close enough that the bottle time activated it, it flashed a terse readout. "Bridge access restricted to loyal soldiers of the fort. Stand and be recognized." Corda frowned. "I guess they won't want visitors. How am I going to convince that stupid robot to move?" "There's a rocket launcher on the battlefield," Jester said. "That would probably do the trick." "No," Corda said decisively. "I was just talking about my discomfort with using battle as a solution for all problems. I feel like a real hypocrite if I did that." "Then what are you going to do, boss?" The voice from the PDA sounded plaintive. "We're going to run out of bottle time if you keep wandering around out here." Corda checked the time supply readout on the inside of his mirrored glasses. The amount available had dropped, but there was still plenty left. "I have an idea," he said. "Just watch." Slowly, trying his best to ignore the carnage around him, Corda returned to the battlefield. He found a dead soldier who had fallen with the banner of herbs still clutched in one hand. The standard-bearer had been killed by a shot that left his black plasteel uniform fairly undamaged. Corda carefully removed the soldier's full-face helmet and looked into his dead eyes. "I need to take your uniform, Lieutenant," he said, "for the good of herbs." The soldier stared blankly, but Korda felt a bit better about his looting as he stripped the young man's uniform from him. On impulse, he pulled the battle standard from under its fallen bearer as well. Then, gently, he closed the soldier's eyes. "How do you know if you have the right stuff, boss?" Jester asked. "The device," he indicated the design, an irregular crescent set with 2 small circles silk-screened on the standard, "matches the device on the scanner and on the fort." "I get it," she said. "Good thinking. Now can we go back to the ship?" "I think so," he said. "I don't see any need to get into the fort now. With these I should be able to fool the robot into believing I'm a soldier from the fort." The Jester made the trip back to the Garden of Honor swiftly. Korda barely had time to change into the soldier's uniform and brush the worst of the dirt off of the standard. "How do I look, Jester?" he said, checking his reflection in a mirror. "Really dangerous," she said. "What is it about a man in uniform? Gets a girl every time." Korda refrained from commenting that a ship's computer could hardly be qualified as a girl. Jester would not appreciate the reminder. She might even get sulky. Why had he set himself up for problems like this? The Raven cawed and took a few more flaps in its interrupted flight as Korda passed beneath it. After the near silence of his passage, the sudden hoarse sound made Korda jump. "Good thing that's all it did, huh, boss?" Jester commented slyly through her PDA. Korda groaned, but otherwise decided that dignity forbade an answer. Approaching the robot, he struck what he hoped was a military pose. "Welcome to the Garden of Honor," the robot boomed. "Heroes of the fort are ever welcome in this place." Good, he had fooled it. Now for the tricky part. "Comrade in arms," he said, "I bring you new orders from Lord Detir. You are needed on the battlefield. I am to take your post here." There was a grinding of metal against metal as the robot turned its helmeted head to study him. "That is highly irregular," it said. Inspired, Korda held out the standard from the fort. Despite his best efforts to clean it, it was still rather bedraggled. "The battle rages fiercely," he declaimed, thinking that he sounded rather like an old war movie. "The men at the fort need this to inspire them to carry on. I cannot travel the distance quickly enough, but with your great size—" "Say no more, brother-in-arms," the robot boomed. "I will carry the banner to the fort. Guard my post well." "I will," Korda said. Joy that he had been able to do this without damaging the steadfast metal soldier gave his voice true intensity. "I promise." The robot stepped from the pedestal. Wanting it to fully clear, Korda moved so that his bottled time would keep it active for a few more steps. What should have happened was that, when the time field was withdrawn, the robot would lumber to a halt. What actually happened was far more frightening. A beam of yellow-white light flashed out, striking the robot in the center of its glistening chest armor. For a moment, the metal warrior simply froze in place. Then, it was lined in a yellow-white field. There was a flash that burnt itself into Korda's retina, even as his shades adjusted to compensate. When he blinked, the spots from his eyes, the robot had vanished. "Something blew it away," Jester said, her voice trembling. "One shot and it was gone. Renee, it could have hit you." "I know," Korda said. Either the height of the robot threw the aim off, or whoever it was meant to take out the robot all along. The PDA bobbed to face him. "You know what this means, boss, don't you?" Korda nodded. "It means that there is someone else active in a universe that is supposed to be completely frozen in time. And whoever it is has some pretty big guns," Jester added. "Let's get that resonance tracer set up. The sooner I have you safe inside the ship's armor, the better I'll feel." Swinging his pack from his shoulders, Korda hauled out the resonance tracer. "Jester, for once I couldn't agree with you more." Chapter 5. Back aboard the Jester, Korda recharged his harness of bottled time and then concealed it as best as he could under the trooper uniform. It made the lines a bit bulky, but he thought it would pass. The resonance tracer's reading, perhaps predictably, led Korda back to the fort. To his supreme satisfaction, the fort's scanner activated the mechanical bridge without hesitation. "Come on, Jester," he said, as the metal platform started to extend. "We have places to go." "And people to see," she said. "This is getting easier. Perhaps the shot that blasted the robot was a fluke. I was really worried while you were out there in the open, but nothing happened." Korda decided not to tell her that the robot's unseen assailant might have chosen not to fire because a shot at Korda on the battlefield could have ruined the scanner or some other part of the elaborate diorama. Jester was very good at logical deduction, but she didn't have a human's capacity for morbid imaginings. His shoulders were tense as he walked out over the bridge, half expecting to feel the impact of a bullet or laser, but he passed unmolested. The scanner at the fort's massive blast doors recognized his uniform, opening the portal just enough to let him enter. Once he was inside and the doors safely closed behind him, Korda pulled out the resonance tracer's directions finder. The resonance tracer itself, when activated, was too bulky to carry around, but the direction finder fit easily in one hand. A simple readout indicated the location of magnetic north. "That corridor, and possibly down," Korda said, already walking that way. He glanced over his shoulder. The quiet of the stasis-held building was eerie. He was also too aware that an enemy using bottled time could quite easily sneak up on him. There would be no sound to give away the other's position until they were close enough for their time spheres to overlap. The knowledge did not add to his confidence. He strode down the silent corridors, trying hard not to keep looking over his shoulder. Each time he passed a door, he checked the direction finder. Time after time, the flashing arrow led him deeper and deeper into the heart of the fort. "Does this place give you the willies, boss?" Jester asked. "Yes, it does," he said honestly. "Me too," she said. "How can a computer get the willies?" he asked, somewhat exasperated. "Probabilities indicate that this building conceals dangers to your health and well-being," she said promptly, "and that gives me the willies." "Great," he said. "Just let me know if you spot any of these probabilities becoming realities." His voice trailed off. While they talked, he had continued walking toward the heart of the fort. Now, in a room to his left, he saw a strange and macabre sight. A dark-haired, olive-skinned man, clad in flowing desert robes, was standing with his back to an armored section of wall, his hands bound behind him. Another man, this one in the uniform of herbs, stood in front of him, apparently frozen in the act of trying a blindfold around the first man's eyes. 4 soldiers with rifles, held at ease, waited across the room. A 5th rifle leaned against the wall. "That's a firing squad," Korda said. "Looks like it," Jester agreed. Korda walked a few steps into the room, carefully keeping his bottled time from activating any of the people within. "Boss, what are you doing? The world key isn't that way." Korda continued into the room. "I can't leave a man to be shot." "Why not?" the Jester said. "He might deserve it." "Jester," Korda growled. "Sorry, boss." The voice from the PDA actually sounded contrite. Korda examined the tableau before him. The prisoner stood close enough to the man with the blindfold that Korda could not activate one without activating the other. Fortunately, the firing squad was positioned far enough across the room that they could remain inactivated if he was careful. However, these were not figures of plastic or clay. They were living, breathing people, and if he made the wrong choice, one or more might die. Decision made, Korda advanced on the prisoner. The instant his bottled time touched the pair, the man with the blindfold raised his arms to complete the interrupted motion. "Hold it right there," Korda bluffed, his voice steady. "I have a blaster aimed at your heart." The herbs soldier stiffened, then turned his head slowly. "How did you get in here? Guards!" The prisoner looked no less surprised. Korda imagined how he would feel if one moment he was preparing to be executed, and the next he found a stranger coming to the rescue. "Your guards cannot come to you," Korda said to the soldier. Without taking his eyes from the astonished soldier, Korda spoke to the prisoner. Come over here beside me." With understandable alacrity, the prisoner moved to obey. Seeing Korda was unarmed, the guard dove to where his rifle leaned against the wall. As soon as his leap carried him outside of the radius of Korda's bottled time, he was frozen in midair. "By Allah," the prisoner swore, "that is astonishing. What manner of sorcerer are you? Did Sheikh Dwistor send you to save me?" Korda grinned and shook his head. "I am no sorcerer. I simply took advantage of the guard's ignorance. Had he not tried to attack me, the result would have been much the same. I would have stepped out of his range and the stasis would have claimed him again, although in a less spectacular fashion." "Stasis? Again?" The prisoner was clearly confused. "I do not think that you are Dwistor's man. Who are you?" "My name is Rene Korda, and this," he answered, gesturing at the PDA hovering over his shoulder, "is Jester. Who are you?" "I am Tycho Higgins of Aurans," the man said, with a curious glance at the PDA. "Glad to meet you, Mr. Higgins." Korda offered his hand. Hesitating for only a moment, Higgins gave him a firm hand clasp, then he bowed deeply from the waist. "I am pleased to meet you, Mr. Korda." He smiled, formality vanishing, his teeth twinkling white within his dark beard. "Actually, I am more than pleased. I am delighted. Had you not come when you did, I would most certainly be dead." "Perhaps not as soon as you might think," Korda said, leading the way out of the room. "I wonder what the firing squad will think when they found you vanished." "Possibly they will think I am a sorcerer and conjured myself away," Higgins said. "The people of Herbs have always been wary of the sorcery of Aurans. We can't seem to get through to them that the power does not work outside the specialized physics of our universe." "So the physics of Aurans permits magic," Korda said. Already his impulsive rescue attempt was reaping rewards. "That's right," Higgins said. "It's not the flamboyant, flashy magic of Cabal. It manifests more in creatures and physical anomalies. Still, we have our share of sorcerers. I never bothered to disabuse the urbanites of their belief that I was one." Korda found a comfortable bench and offered Tycho Higgins water and rations from his pack. Higgins accepted both. The PDA rose to the highest limits of the time bubble, spinning slightly as she kept watch. "They kept me without food and water in the holding cells," Higgins said around a mouthful of Vita bread. "I suppose they thought they could weaken my will and make me confess. They forget that a desert dweller is accustomed to doing without food and water. Still, we take it when it's offered, and there is no pleasure in doing without." "Why were they holding you prisoner, Higgins?" Korda asked. "From what you said before, I had the impression that you had visited Herbs frequently." Higgins spread his hands and shrugged in puzzlement. "I have no idea, Mr. Korda. Sheikh Dwistor has frequently sent me here on diplomatic missions. We trade with Herbs in raw metals and silicon chips in return for machinery. I was negotiating with the Minister of Trade when some guards marched me off to a jet flyer and took me to the fort." "Did they say what crime you were accused of, Mr. Higgins?" Korda asked. "Espionage." Tycho Higgins flung up his hands. "Me! I have been a trusted emissary from Aurans for years." "Still, they must have had a reason for believing." Korda rubbed his chin. "Tell me, what were the questions they asked you?" Higgins frowned. "They wanted to know about my other ship. I have no ship but the one that bore me here from Aurans, and that one remained in the hangar in Ground Zero." "Ground Zero?" Korda asked. "The capital city of Herbs," Higgins explained. "An expression of Detir's peculiar sense of humor. I asked the Minister of Trade about it once, and he said that in a nuclear war the capital city is always at Ground Zero. Detir apparently had no desire to hide from that knowledge." "Detir," Korda mused. "Have you ever met him?" "Sans, yes, I have." Higgins shuddered as if the memory was not a pleasant one. "He's nothing but a brain, A brain in an anti-gravity case. All of his communication is done through mechanical devices. A brain in a box, ruler of an entire universe. Corda shook his head in puzzlement. Somehow I expected something else. A tank, a war robot, a missile. Given the urbanite obsession with war, why would Dieter settle for something so mundane? Higgins shrugged. Asking questions like that is not part of my job. My job is to arrange trade negotiations for Twister. Certainly the situation on Earth isn't going to make that any easier. Corda rose from the bench and packed away the remains of his supplies. Do you want to help me reactivate this universe? Higgins looked him squarely in the eye. Let me put it to you another way. I have a duty to Aurans. If I stay here and help you, I may learn things that herbs would rather not have a stranger know. Therefore, I endanger not only my usefulness to my ruler, but my own life. I am engaged to marry a lovely young woman who will mourn if I fail to return. Do you think I should remain? No one needs to know you helped me, Corda countered. We cannot be certain of that, Higgins said. No, I cannot help you. If you insist, you may as well march me back in front of the firing squad. Corda shook his head. I could not do that. I could simply walk away from you here. You would return to stasis. Then, as soon as I succeeded in my mission and time returned, you could make your escape. Higgins studied him. That's a long shot for a man with no vessel and no weapons. True, Corda said, but still better odds than a firing squad. I accept that. Higgins leaned back against the wall. Very well, walk away. I will even wish you luck, and mean it. Corda studied him, remembering the missile blast that had come from nowhere to destroy the robot in the Garden of Honor. If he left Tico Higgins here, he would be putting the man at risk, a stupid thing to do after saving his life. Renee Corda sighed. I think the wisest thing for me to do would be to escort you to your ship at Ground Zero. I can supply you with enough bottled time for you to clear the universe. After that, you're on your own. Higgins beamed as he leapt to his feet. Allah is wise and merciful. He sends his servant a protector in the darkness of herbs. Corda is the servant of the great God. Even Jester, who had been unwontedly silent, had no clever response for this outrageous claim. The Jester carried them unmolested to the city of Ground Zero. The city was a lovely, futuristic place, but like so much of what Corda had seen on Herbs, it was structured for war, not peace. Tidy signs indicated the location of bomb shelters. Soldiers wearing the urban emblem stood at intersections, deadly blaster rifles slung from shoulder harnesses. The vehicles that hovered frozen over the streets were armed and armored as if in preparation for a riot or an invasion. Even the monorail that twirled and twined about the city's glass and steel towers like a string of pearls in a debutante's hair bore concealed laser cannons. Ground Zero, Jester announced over the ship's intercom, though it looks more like a death zone to me. I'm bringing us in on a landing pad on the building Tico indicated was the capital center, and don't worry, this time I scanned for mines. Corda patted the arm of his chair. Very good, Jess. I'll take Tico to his ship, collect whatever information may be useful, and then we'll head back to the fort and finish our job. Right. The PDA bobbed out of its holding rack. And I'll be ready to keep you out of trouble all the way. Tico Higgins led the way across the rooftop landing field to a lift shaft. Over one shoulder, he had slung a pack with a supply of bottled time for his own ship. This lift has self-contained power, he said. One of Dieter's men was bragging about it one day. A hit on the central power unit would only slow functions down, not stop them. For us, Corda said, moving up to the control panel and punching a button, it means that our bottled time will still make machinery operate. Good. The lift carried them almost soundlessly several levels down, across and then down again. Tico Higgins kept a wary eye on the readouts, as if fearing that if he looked away, the elevator might carry him somewhere else entirely. "You seem edgy," Corda observed. "Dread," Tico Higgins replied succinctly. "I fear that I will never leave this place alive. There may be no magic in herbs, but still I feel as if my doom is near." The PDA brought its smiling face close to Higgins's. "Don't worry, Tico. You'll be home to the deserts and your sweetie soon enough." "I hope so." Higgins paused. "My report will not please Twister. He is a fair man, in his way, but very touchy about what he perceives as slights to his honor. If he decides that my arrest was such a slight, he could enter into war with herbs, and I fear we would lose such a war. We play at battle with swords and archery. Herbs knows nothing but war in many forms." The lift stopped with a faint thump. Higgins hurried forth almost before the doors had opened. Corda followed with equal haste, lest the anxious man find himself inadvertently exceeding the limits of the bottled time. "We'll help you mount the bottled time on your ship," Corda said. "Then you must be on your way as quickly as possible. You only have a limited amount of time." "How odd is it when metaphor becomes literal truth?" Tico Higgins commented. "There is my ship, the little cocky V-Wing. I call her the Whirlwind." "Pretty name for a ship," Corda said. "And a reminder of my home," Higgins said. "Whirlwinds are sometimes useful for transportation, a thing you might remember if you come there." Corda wrinkled his brow in puzzlement, but Higgins did not give him time to ask questions. Already he was opening up the ship's engine panels. With Jester supplying instructions relayed from the Jester's library, the two men made short work of mounting the bottled time in place. "Good luck," Corda said as Higgins climbed into the cockpit. Higgins, safe now within his own bottled time, waved cheerfully. "I will trust in Allah. Luck is a capricious deity. Thank you for the service you have done me. Perhaps we will meet again." Corda stepped clear of the ship, still waving. It would not do for him to be too close when Tico Higgins fired up the Whirlwind. "Boss?" Jester asked as they rode the lift to an observation platform from which they could see Higgins safely away. "Can I ask you a question?" "You already have," he said, then relented. "Yes, what do you want to know?" "Why didn't you ever tell Tico Higgins that Aurans was in stasis? If the Terran Regional Representative's report was true, he's going to get home and end up frozen." "True," Corda said, "but if I told him while he was here, he might have decided that Herbs was in some way guilty and gone on a vendetta. He seemed a pleasant enough person, but people react oddly when they believe their home is in danger." "Oh," Jester said, the PDA holding still in the air as if the computer was deep in thought. "That was a good idea." "Thank you, Jess," Corda said. Then he raised a hand and pointed. "There goes Tico, safely away despite all his feelings of dread." His words trailed off. Even as he spoke, red beams of light shot from the clouds. Tico Higgins turned the Whirlwind on her side in time to miss all but a grazing shot. Trailing a faint plume of smoke, the spaceship gained altitude and speed. Other bolts of laser light shot forth, but none appeared to touch the ship. Within seconds, the Whirlwind was lost to sight. "Maybe I shouldn't be so quick to mock his intuitions," Corda said slowly. "Boss, who shot at him?" Jester's tone was worried. "Perhaps the bottled time we mounted on the Whirlwind was enough to activate an automatic weapons platform," Corda said. "These urbanites must have all sorts of auto-defenses, right?" "Right," Jester said, but her tone said she was not convinced. Considering the course of recent events, Corda was not certain that he was, either. He glanced toward the sky. Under stasis, it was still. Clouds hung like fluffy bits of cotton glued onto blue construction paper by a kindergartner. Yet behind that calm vista lurked weapons capable of blowing a starship from the skies. "Let's get out of here, Jess," Corda said, heading back into the main building from the observation platform. "I've changed my mind about scouting further. We'll get back to the fort, find the world key, and finish the job we came for." "What job might that be?" said a hissing.
And what job might that be?
Said a hissing voice. Jess, this is no time for games, Corda said, spinning in the direction of the voice. Boss, I didn't say anything, the PDA bobbed forward a few inches. It did. Corda blinked in astonishment, his hand dropping to his blaster. A hulking, bipedal reptile stood at the end of the corridor, effectively blocking his exit. It wore a metallic tunic emblazoned with the emblem of herbs and carried a large laser cannon, the type that usually took a human, both arms and a tripod to manipulate, tucked lightly under one arm. The two human guards flanking it looked so small and ineffective that Corda had to forcibly remind himself how dangerous the blasters they held leveled at him were. All three of them stood within faintly glowing halos of bottled time. Apparently, as Tico Higgins had indicated, the Herb's military really did prepare for all eventualities.
Do not move or we will vaporize you, the reptile said. And dig what information we need from the computer in your ship.
You just try, the PDA muttered furiously. I'll show you what for. Hush, Jester, Corda said. Let me handle this. He lifted his hands, turning the palms outward so the reptile and its human goons could easily see that they were empty. You have the advantage of me, Corda said smoothly. I fear that I do not know who you are or what I have done to merit your attention. The reptile bared needle-sharp teeth at him.
I am Grinskol of the Council of the Wise. You are a spy and an invader.
Corda shook his head. I'm not a spy.
Do you deny that you assisted the spy from Aurans to escape?
Grinskull's voice rasped unpleasantly. Tico Higgins was a trade negotiator, Corda said. I merely helped to prevent the irredeemable wrong that would have occurred if your firing squad had executed him.
So you admit to assisting him?
Grinskull's tone was smugly satisfied.
Very good. Your trial shall not unduly waste the time of the Council of the Wise.
Trial? Corda said. For what?
For spying, Grinskull said. I thought you understood that, foolish human.
But I just told you that I've done nothing wrong, Corda protested. Grinskull only chuckled, an unpleasant sound that would not have been recognizable as humor if his guards had not smiled.
Put your hands on the top of your head and march,
Grinskull ordered, waving the nose of his laser cannon as if the weapon weighed nothing at all.
We cannot keep the council waiting.
Looking down the barrels of 3 weapons, any one of which could quite easily end his tenure in this universe, or any other, Rene Corda folded his hands on top of his head and marched. Lead on, gentlemen, he said. I look forward to meeting the Council of the Wise. Liar, the PDA whispered in his ear like the voice of his conscience. You're right, Corda whispered back. What else could I say?